For those of you calling in conscious love, especially those asking whether the person in front of you can truly support the life your soul is trying to build, I want to begin with what is showing up through this first card. The Eight of Wands reversed, not as a prediction, as a mirror. This card speaks to interrupted momentum, scattered signals, and the feeling of having a lot happening without anything truly moving forward. And I think that matters, because many of us have been taught to read intensity as confirmation. We feel chemistry, a flood of messages, a string of synchronicities, and assume the speed itself must mean alignment. But sometimes what arrives quickly does not arrive clearly. Sometimes a person enters your life carrying enough resemblance to what you asked for that you begin filling in the missing pieces. You sense potential, you notice their gifts, you imagine how the connection could mature. And because you are perceptive and deeply attuned, you can feel not only who they are now, but who they might become. That is where discernment becomes necessary. The question is not only, is there something meaningful here? There may be. The deeper question is, does this connection support the direction my life is asking me to move in? What I have noticed is that intuition becomes harder to hear when our attention is constantly pulled outward. We watch their tone, timing, consistency, and distance. We interpret pauses, try to understand mixed signals, and gather more information because we hope one more sign will settle the uncertainty. Yet your system may already be giving you an answer. You may feel more scattered after speaking with them. You may lose focus on your creative work. You may notice that your energy is becoming organized around the relationship instead of around your own life. That does not make the person bad or the connection meaningless. It may simply mean that this person is revealing the place where excitement can override self-trust. The Eight of Wands reversed asks you to slow the momentum long enough to see what is happening, not what could happen. Not what you hope will happen, what is happening now, because the partner who supports your soul's mission will not require you to abandon your inner direction just to maintain the connection. Next, we need to look at why sensitive people can perceive so much, yet still struggle to trust what they already know. And this is where the Nine of Swords becomes important. Again, not as a prediction, as a way of understanding what happens when perception turns against itself. Sensitive people often notice what has not been said. You feel the hesitation beneath someone's reassurance. You sense when their energy changes, even if their words remain the same. You can recognize the fear behind their distance, the tenderness beneath their defensiveness, and the possibility inside a person who has not yet learned how to offer that possibility consistently. That sensitivity is real. But the Nine of Swords shows what can happen when all of that awareness becomes directed toward understanding them, while your own experience is placed on hold. You begin asking why they are withdrawing, instead of noticing how their withdrawal affects you. You consider what they may be afraid of, what they have been through, what they need in order to feel safe. And because your compassion allows you to see the complexity of their behavior, you may hesitate to trust the simplicity of your own response. You are tired, you are confused, you do not feel secure in what is being offered. Compassion can explain why someone struggles to meet you. It cannot make their struggle compatible with the life you are building, and understanding someone is not the same as being supported by them. This can be difficult to accept because sensitive people are often capable of holding several truths at once. You can know that someone cares and still feel alone in the connection. You can see their potential and still recognize that their present capacity is limited. You can understand their wounds without making those wounds as the organizing principle of your relationship. The Nine of Swords speaks to the mind continuing a conversation that the body may have already completed. Perhaps your body tightens before you hear from them. Perhaps you feel relief when plans are cancelled, followed by guilt for feeling relieved. Perhaps you keep losing sleep over a question that seems to return no matter how many explanations you find. Intuition does not always arrive as a dramatic realization. Sometimes it is the repetition, the same uneasiness, the same loss of focus, the same feeling that you must work harder to remain connected to yourself whenever this person comes close. Hope, however, keeps asking for one more piece of evidence, one more conversation, one more change in behaviour, one more moment that proves the uncertainty was temporary. This is why slowing down matters. When your attention is scattered across every possible meaning, it becomes difficult to hear the meaning your own life is already expressing. But there is another distinction we need to make. Because not every uncomfortable feeling is intuition. Sometimes it is fear, sometimes it is anxiety, sometimes it is desire trying to protect the future it has imagined. So how do you tell the difference? This is where the Three of Pentacles reversed becomes useful, not because it gives you a formula, but because it asks you to notice whether what you are feeling is creating greater coherence or pulling you further away from yourself. Intuition is not always calm. Sometimes it arrives with grief, sometimes it brings disappointment. Sometimes the truth is so different from what you wanted that your body reacts before your mind is ready to understand why. And anxiety is not always meaningless. It may be responding to something real. The difficulty is that anxiety often takes one signal and multiplies it into many possible stories. They have not replied, so perhaps they are losing interest, perhaps they are overwhelmed. Perhaps you said too much. Perhaps they are testing you. Perhaps this is simply their communication style. The mind keeps building explanations because uncertainty feels unfinished. Intuition is often simpler. It may say, I do not feel met here. Desire responds, but what if they change? Intuition may say, this pattern is costing me something. Hope responds, maybe one more conversation will fix it. Fear can also sound protective. It may tell you not to open your heart because vulnerability has been painful before. But intuition is less concerned with avoiding vulnerability than it is with preventing self-abandonment. One says, do not let anyone close. The other says, do not leave yourself in order to keep someone close. That distinction may not become clear in a single moment. It often reveals itself through pattern. Do you feel constricted before speaking with them because intimacy itself frightens you? Or because you have learned that honesty in this connection leads to confusion, withdrawal, or defensiveness? Do you rehearse every conversation because you are afraid of being seen? Or because you are trying to find the exact wording that will make a basic need acceptable? The Three of Pentacles reverse speaks to effort that is not becoming collaboration. You may be working very hard to understand the connection, while the connection itself remains difficult to build. You may be adjusting, translating, waiting, and trying again, yet still feel that the two of you are not creating from the same foundation. And sometimes the clearest information arrives when there is distance. Your thoughts settle. Your creative energy returns. You remember what mattered before the relationship became the center of your attention. That does not automatically mean you should leave. It means there is something worth observing. Because sensitive people can perceive the right signal and still attach the wrong explanation to it. You may sense instability and call it fear of commitment. You may feel depleted and call it deep attachment. You may experience relief and mistake it for avoidance. So rather than asking only, how strongly do I feel about this person? Begin noticing what happens to your life in their presence. What happens to your energy? What happens to your purpose? And what becomes easier, or harder, to build when the two of you are together? And this is where the Five of Swords reversed asks us to look beyond the feeling itself and toward the life that forms around it, because a connection can feel powerful while quietly consuming the very resources your purpose requires. Your attention, your consistency, your willingness to make clear decisions. You may still be creating, but only in the spaces left over after thinking about the relationship. You may still be resting, but not deeply. You may still be moving forward, while part of your energy remains occupied by a conversation that has not happened, or a question that has not been answered. This is important because support is not only expressed through encouragement. Someone can tell you that they believe in your gifts and still create a dynamic that makes it difficult for you to use them. They can admire your ambition while resisting the boundaries that protect it. They can say they want you to grow while becoming unsettled when that growth changes your availability, your priorities, or the way you see yourself. The Five of Swords reversed speaks to the cost of remaining in patterns where too much energy is spent managing tension. You may begin avoiding certain topics because you know how quickly the conversation becomes confusing. You may delay a decision because you are anticipating their reaction. You may leave an interaction questioning your own intentions even when you entered it with clarity. That is different from being challenged in a way that helps you grow. An aligned partner may ask difficult questions. They may reflect something you would rather not see. They may disagree with you. But healthy challenge eventually returns you to yourself. You become clearer, more honest, more capable of making a decision that respects both people. Destabilizing uncertainty does the opposite. It keeps you circling the same issue without resolution. It asks for more explanation, more emotional labor, more compromise, while your original concern becomes harder to name. So notice what the relationship makes possible. Are your plans becoming clearer or constantly being postponed? Can your meaningful work remain protected without being treated as rejection? Are your boundaries respected even when they are inconvenient? Can you remain connected to your friendships, your health, your inner practices, and the parts of your life that existed before this person arrived? This does not mean a supportive relationship will always feel easy, and it does not mean a difficult relationship is without meaning. Some connections are meaningful because they reveal where you have been negotiating against your own direction. But meaning and compatibility are not the same thing. The person who supports your soul's mission may not create the intensity you have learned to associate with destiny. They may create something quieter. Enough safety for your energy to stop fighting the relationship and begin returning to your life. And this is where the Two of Wands reverse becomes revealing. Because quieter support can feel unfamiliar when you have learned to recognize love through anticipation. When a connection is unpredictable, your attention becomes heightened. Every message feels important. Every delay seems to carry meaning. A reunion can feel more powerful because it follows distance, and a small moment of reassurance can feel enormous because it arrives after uncertainty. The intensity is real, but part of that intensity may be created by not knowing where you stand. The Two of Wands reversed speaks to the difficulty of moving forward when so much energy is being spent waiting for direction from the connection. You may feel as though something significant is always about to happen. A decision, a conversation, a deeper commitment, yet your life remains positioned around possibility rather than movement. Steadiness can feel very different. There may be fewer dramatic shifts to interpret. You may not experience the same emotional rise and fall. You may know when you will hear from them. You may understand what they mean because their actions do not repeatedly contradict their words. And at first, that can feel strangely quiet. Sometimes peace is mistaken for boredom because peace does not demand constant attention. It does not require you to monitor the connection in order to feel secure inside it. That does not mean healthy love lacks passion. Passion and stability can exist together, but stability removes the uncertainty that can make attraction feel consuming. It gives desire somewhere to land. It allows closeness to deepen without needing distance to make it feel valuable. This is why the slowed momentum of the Eight of Wands reverse matters. When the speed decreases, you can begin to see whether there is substance beneath it. Can you still feel connected when there is nothing dramatic to resolve? Can you speak honestly without fearing that one difficult conversation will change everything? Can you return to your work, your rest, and your own direction without feeling that the relationship will disappear if you stop feeding it constant energy? A grounded connection does not require you to compete with ambiguity for a place in someone's life. You do not have to keep decoding your importance. You do not have to repeatedly lose your center and call the process transformation. The Two of Wands reversed asks whether you are hesitating to choose what is stable because uncertainty has become more familiar than peace, and this is where discernment becomes more difficult. Because some people know how to speak about purpose, alignment, healing, and conscious partnership. They may recognize the language of the life you want to build. but recognizing that language is not the same as having the capacity to live it. And this is where the Four of Swords becomes important, because capacity is not revealed by what someone understands in theory. It is revealed by what they can remain present for in practice. A person may see your gifts clearly. They may speak about your purpose with genuine admiration. They may understand the language of healing, growth, and conscious partnership. They may even imagine a future with you that sounds very similar to the one you have imagined for yourself. And they may mean it, but meaning something in a moment is different from having the capacity to sustain it over time. The Four of Swords speaks to the space between intention and embodiment. It asks what happens when the conversation ends and ordinary life begins. Can this person support your need for rest without interpreting your distance as rejection? Can they respect the time your work requires without competing with it for attention? Can they remain grounded when your growth changes the rhythm of the relationship? Sometimes admiration exists alongside subtle competition. They may celebrate your progress until it makes you less available. They may encourage your confidence until that confidence strengthens a boundary they preferred you not to have. They may say they want you to follow your calling, while repeatedly creating tension around the choices that calling requires. This does not always mean they are consciously trying to hold you back. Sometimes they simply do not know how to participate in a relationship that cannot be organized around their comfort. Some spiritual language can exist alongside avoidance. A person may speak about divine timing when they are unwilling to make a decision. They may describe inconsistency as a need for freedom. They may frame repeated postponement as trust in the process. Again, the words may not be intentionally deceptive, but beautiful language does not change the effect of a repeated pattern. The Four of Swords asks you to step away from the explanation long enough to notice what is actually being offered. Not do they understand my mission, but can they support the conditions my mission requires? Not only do they see who I am, but can they remain present when being with me asks something mature of them? Because seeing you is not the same as making room for you, and promising a future is not the same as becoming someone who can help protect what that future will need. The true test often appears when loving you is no longer only inspiring. It appears when your purpose requires time, when it requires sacrifice, when it requires a boundary, a difficult choice, or a direction they cannot control. And this is where the Seven of Swords asks us to notice what happens when your purpose begins requiring choices that cannot be made quietly. Not because this card automatically means deception, but because it can reflect the ways we begin moving around a relationship instead of moving honestly within it. You may protect your creative time without explaining how important it is because you are trying to avoid conflict. You may accept an opportunity and delay sharing the news because you are anticipating their disappointment. You may soften a boundary, minimize a goal, or make your growth appear less disruptive so the relationship can remain comfortable. Over time, that creates distance, not only between you and the other person, between you and yourself. A partner who supports your soul's mission does not need to share the same calling. They do not need to understand every part of your work or feel inspired by every decision you make. But they must respect that your direction is real. That may look very ordinary. It may look like protecting an hour you need to create, respecting your solitude without turning it into a personal rejection, adjusting to a season when your priorities change, celebrating an opportunity that does not center the relationship. It may also look like honest disagreement, because support does not mean endless accommodation. A mature partner can say, "I miss you," without asking you to abandon what matters. They can name their needs without making your boundary a betrayal. They can ask for greater presence without requiring you to become smaller, and the same responsibility belongs to you. A soul mission should not become a reason to avoid intimacy, neglect commitments, or treat another person's humanity as less important than your purpose. Your calling does not remove the need for communication. It does not make every sacrifice theirs to carry. Mature love is not one person disappearing so the other can expand. It is mutual stewardship. Two people learning how to protect what is meaningful in each other without abandoning what is meaningful in themselves. The Seven of Swords asks whether honesty is safe enough to remain visible in the connection. Can you say what your life requires without disguising it? Can they express what the relationship requires without controlling you? Can both truths exist in the same room? Because when a connection is aligned, you do not have to keep slipping away from yourself to preserve it. And perhaps the clearest way to see what is actually being built is to stop doing all the hidden work, stop explaining every silence, stop chasing every shift. Stop compensating for what they are not bringing. Stop carrying the connection toward a future that requires two people. Then notice what happens when you place your share of the relationship down and allow them to reveal whether they are willing to pick up theirs. And this is where the moon reversed becomes revealing, because when you stop managing the connection, what was hidden by constant effort begins to surface. Not hidden because someone was necessarily trying to deceive you. Hidden because your attention was always moving ahead of the present moment. You initiated the difficult conversations. You translated their silence into explanations. You reassured them when they withdrew, minimized your needs when they seemed overwhelmed, and kept the connection moving whenever it began to lose momentum. You may have called this patience, you may have called it compassion, and perhaps some of it was. But compassion becomes overfunctioning when your understanding, repeatedly, replaces their responsibility. The moon reversed speaks to what becomes visible when you stop supplying the missing clarity. You do not send the message that makes the silence easier. You do not explain their behavior to yourself before they have explained it to you. You do not offer reassurance simply because their discomfort makes you anxious. And that space may feel unbearable at first, because when you have been carrying the emotional movement of a relationship, stillness can feel like abandonment. You may want to reach out just to restore the familiar rhythm. You may begin questioning whether stepping back is unfair, immature, or somehow withholding love. But this is not punishment. It is not a test designed to make someone chase you. It is not a strategy. It is a return to proportion. You are allowing each person's actual willingness to become visible without covering the distance between you. And something important may happen. The other person may step forward. They may initiate. They may name what has been difficult to name. The connection may begin finding a rhythm that no longer depends on you anticipating every need. Or the silence may remain. The momentum may disappear. And you may realize that what felt like mutual movement was being sustained largely by your attention, your interpretation, and your hope. This is the deeper invitation of the Eight of Wands reversed, to interrupt momentum that was never fully shared, because more analysis cannot reveal what space is already showing you. You do not need to decide immediately what the silence means. You only need to resist filling it before it has had the chance to tell the truth. The moon reversed does not ask you to become suspicious. It asks you to stop protecting the connection from its own reality. So when you no longer carry it toward the future you imagined, what remains between you now? And are you willing to believe what you see? And this is where the Four of Cups reversed becomes important, because believing what you see does not mean denying what you felt. You may have been right that the connection mattered. You may have sensed recognition, possibility, or something in this person that awakened a part of you that had been quiet for a long time. Perhaps the connection showed you what you were ready to receive. Perhaps it revealed a deeper capacity for love, honesty, or vulnerability. That intuition may have been accurate, but an accurate feeling can still be given an inaccurate conclusion. You felt, this is significant. And somewhere along the way, significance became permanence, recognition became partnership, potential became a promise. The Four of Cups reversed speaks to the moment when you become willing to see what is actually available, rather than continuing to focus on what the connection might eventually become. Not because the hope was foolish. Hope often forms around something real, a meaningful conversation, a moment of tenderness, a sense that this person understood a part of you others had not seen. Those experiences do not become false simply because the relationship cannot hold the future you imagined. But meaning does not guarantee capacity, and awakening does not always mean accompaniment. Some people enter your life and help you recognize a door. That does not mean they are able to walk through it with you. This is where grief can become part of discernment, because you are not only releasing a person. You may be releasing the version of the future that formed around them, the shared life you pictured, the way you thought their gifts might meet yours. The belief that what was possible between you would eventually become what was practiced between you. Discernment does not erase the love. It does not remove the spiritual meaning. It does not require you to decide that nothing was real. It simply refuses to turn possibility into proof. Your intuition never lied when it told you the connection mattered. But interpretation can become entangled with longing, with timing, with attachment, with the fear that losing this person means losing what they awakened in you. You do not lose that awakening. What opened in you belongs to you now. And the Four of Cups reversed asks whether you are ready to look beyond the cup you have been waiting for and notice what reality is offering in the present. Because once you stop asking this connection to become something it has not demonstrated, your attention becomes available again, not only to another person, to your own life. And from that place, supportive love begins to feel less like something you must interpret, and more like something you can actually live inside. And this is where the Hanged Man reversed brings us back to the question beneath every card we have seen. Not, how do I make this connection become what I hoped it would be, but, what becomes possible when I stop suspending my life around it? A partner who supports your soul's mission will not ask you to remain indefinitely in uncertainty while calling that patience. They will not require you to prove your love by tolerating what repeatedly disconnects you from yourself. That does not mean they will always know exactly what to say. They may have fears, they may need time, they may make mistakes, but they will be willing to participate in the truth of the relationship. They will communicate rather than leave you to translate every silence. They will respect your boundaries without treating them as rejection. They will bring their own effort, their own honesty, and their own responsibility into what the two of you are building, and around that kind of love, something in you begins to settle. Your attention returns. Your creativity has room to breathe. You can make plans without wondering whether your growth will threaten the connection. You can speak honestly without rehearsing every sentence in advance. You can remain devoted to your purpose without feeling that love must be sacrificed in order to protect it. This person does not complete you. They do not rescue you from uncertainty or remove every doubt. But the relationship allows both of you to become more truthful, more responsible, more fully present in your own lives. The Hanged Man reversed asks where waiting has become self-abandonment, where reflection has become postponement, where surrender has become a reason not to move. And for some of you, seeing that clearly may bring grief. You may need to reconsider a connection you deeply valued. You may need to release a future that felt meaningful before it became real. That is not failure. Sometimes honouring love means refusing to ask it to carry what it cannot sustain, so trust the recurring evidence. Not only the strongest moment, not only the most beautiful conversation. Notice whether love expands your ability to inhabit your own life, or whether it repeatedly pulls you away from it. Your intuition is not demanding panic. It is not asking you to judge someone before you understand them. It is asking for honest attention to what is repeated, to what your life becomes around the person you are choosing. Because the partner who supports your soul's mission will not leave you suspended between who you are and who you are becoming. They will meet you in motion, and beside them you will not have to disappear in order for love to remain.